Hello, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Warhammer channel. And today, we are going to be learning a little bit about the Primarch Rogal Dorn and what we can learn from him. But before we begin, I want to say that everything Warhammer is owned by Games Workshop and Black Library. With that being said, let's begin. Rogal Dorn is the Primarch of the 7th Legion during the first founding of the Great Crusade, led by the Emperor of Mankind. Like every Primarch, Dorn was thrown into the warp in his pod and landed on the ice planet of Inwit, and was raised by an ice caste, which is one of the tribes/clans of Inwit. And during his time with the clan, which was Clan Dorn, which translated from Old Dramatic is the word thorn, but continuing on with the people of Inwit, they are hardened and nomadic due to the frozen wastes of the planet. But under the surface, the planet was a massive system of ice caves with some lakes of water, and that's where the clans lived. But some did live on the surface of the planet. But far above, in the orbit of Inwit, there were massive spaceports and weapon stations that sat in the cold void created by humans during the dark age of technology that is now lost to time. One such space station would become the Phalanx, the home of the Imperial Fists and their biggest war station. The man who raised Rogal was a smart man, teaching the Primarch about tactics, strategy, and diplomacy. He was caring to the Primarch, giving him a fur cloak that Dorn would sleep with when he did, and carried throughout his time. When Rogal's built and traits from the Emperor kicked in, he was able to train armies and build a small empire to the planets close to Inwit, and eventually melded into the Imperium. The first thing we can see from Rogal Dorn is his skill in building and fortification of an empire, but he's not like his brother Guilliman, who was able to build the empire of Ultramar. The Great Crusade arrived at Inwit, and Dorn was the 7th Primarch found, and the first meeting was one of peace, with the Emperor meeting Rogal on the bridge of the Phalanx. After the conversation, Dorn gave his loyalty to his father, and in return his father repaired the Phalanx and gave it as a gift to the newly found Primarch, as well as his sons, the Imperial Fists. They wasted no time in conquering planets they encountered via diplomacy or violence. Think of the Imperial Fists as a modern military. They're tactical and try not to cause as much damage to the civilian populace of a human world. Dorn mentioned during the Night Crusade that killing unarmed people and destroying things important to the people will only cause the war to continue. Dorn's personality is reserved and stoic. He is meticulous and calculating, and rarely shows emotion. When he does, it is intense. This was shown when the Imperial Fists and the Space Wolves did a joint campaign against the Xeno race called Zahalian in the Adonis cluster, and while Dorn was on the battlements in a cold rage holding the Xenos back, even the Wolf King said that his brother was as swift and unforgiving as the falling edge of an axe. Dorn is an idealist, as well as a fiercely loyal warrior, and his sons show the same traits as their gene father. He stated to them when he first met them that he demanded the same that Dorn would ask for himself. During the Night Crusade, they heard that another son of the Emperor was found on the planet Olympia, named Perturabo. Side note, Dorn and Perturabo are two sides of the same coin. They had the same personality, and both are sublime artisans, and they are both siege experts, but Perturabo and Dorn had a rivalry. Perturabo was the most brutal of the two, by overwhelming firepower and sieging until nothing left, while Dorn was the opposite, using meticulous and more tactical assaults with hitting the heavily defended forts of the enemy and moving on to the next target. Dorn was there at Eleanor when Horus was named War Master, and him and his brothers, Gilman and the Khan, thought it was the right choice, and they moved on, getting back to business, uniting humanity. Following the coronation of Horus, he was ordered alongside the new War Master to discuss the future, and Horus complimented Dorn by saying if the Lunar Wolves had fought against the bastion built and held by the Imperial Fist, it would have lasted for eternity, referring to the lunar wolves being the unstoppable force and the imperial fist being the immovable object. They had both fought alongside each other. After he talked with Horus, he was called back to Terra, alongside the Emperor, to fortify the throne world. And he was given the title of Praetorian of Terra. And the Imperial Palace is a quarter size of the United States, so Dorn had his work cut out for him, as the Great Crusade neared the end and the Horus Heresy would begin. The entire Imperial Fist Legion was called to garrison the Imperial Palace. When Dorn and his sons were on the way to Terra, they ran into several odd warp storms, and they came across a lone, damaged Death Guard ship helmed by Captain Nathaniel Garro and some survivors of the Isfahan III massacre. The loyalist Death Guard captain told about the betrayal of Horus. Dorn became enraged and almost killed Garro, but another survivor helped convince the Primarch. The message was essentially sent to the Emperor's ear. As Dorn fortified the Sol system, he had infiltration that was unplanned for a few decades, made by the Alpha Legion, and they were able to move deep into the defenses of the Investitore and destroyed all the Primarch statues except for the two, one being the 7th Primarch Rogal Dorn and the 20th Primarch Alfarius. This infiltration was to send a message and a challenge from the shadowy Alpha Legion to the honorable Imperial Fists, and Rogal Dorn was happy to accept the challenge from his brother. In time, but not now. He tried to keep it a secret from his father and Malcador, but Malcador found out and he confronted Dorn about it, and he explained he will deal with it. He taxed his leader of the Huskarls, Archimus, to track down the Alpha Legion cell in the Sol system, to track down how they got through the defenses. But there was more problems than meets the eye, and it was in the shape of an Alpha Legion fleet led by Hero Master Kel Silonius, and Alfarius being part of the infiltration team. After the Alpha Legion attacked Pluto and captured its moons, Dorn returned to help because he was helping other planets. Arcanus was among the battle, but he died, killed by Alfarius. But Dorn was able to kill Alfarius by cutting his hands off with his great chain-stored Gulfstorm's teeth, and used his brother's own spear to impale him with it. After Alfarius died, the Alpha Legion retreated and never came back to help the War Master. Dorn and his sons moved back to Terra for the biggest battle in the history of Terra. Thankfully, the Blood Angels and White Scars arrived to assist alongside his brothers, with some other Space Marines, including Corswain the Dark Angel, Garro the Loyalist Death Guard Captain, and Garvio Logan, the former captain of the 10th Company of Lunar Wolves. The siege began in the orbit of Terra, the Battle of Luna, the Loyalist ships defending against the War Master's fleet, but eventually moved back to the weapons stations in orbit. The traders sent drop pods down to the surface to capture the Lionsgate spaceport, and as the battle went on, the Imperial Palace where Dorn and two of his brothers held the line. Dorn was on the battlements fighting traitors with his sons, while his brother Sanguinius held the line at the Lionsgate. With his sons, and the Khan and his sons went out to reinforce the Imperial Guard on the outside defenses, and eventually retook the spaceport, but the battle was getting worse for the Loyalists. Horus heard the news that the Dark Angels and the Ultramarines rather than the Sol system, and Horus set a trap for the Emperor, and his father took it, with Dorn and Sanguinius in their personal guard and Adeptus Custodes. Dorn was the furthest away from Horus, and by the time he reached his traitor brother and his brother and father, it was too late. Horus and Sanguinius was dead. The Emperor was crippled and weakened from the battle. Dorn picked up his father, and the final orders he gave his Praetorian was to rebuild the Imperium. Dorn carried his father's body to the Golden Throne and entombed him on the throne, becoming the Carian Lord of the Imperium that he is now. After the siege ended and the traitors retreated to the Eye of Terror, Dorn gathered his legion and chased after them. But as he hunted them down, Gilliman talked to his brother, and he told that he had to split his legion into chapters of 1,000 Marines each. To prevent another civil war, he agreed to split the Imperial Fists. He did so by assaulting an Iron Warrior stronghold called the Iron Cage, led by the demon Primarch Praetorian himself. This lasted for several weeks and resulted in the death of a lot of Imperial Fists and the theft of a lot of their gene seed. Thankfully, the Ultramarines saved the day and pushed the demon Primarch Praetorian and his Iron Warriors away. It is believed that Dorn died or went missing during the fleet against Abaddon the Spoiler, and the only thing that was found was his severed hand, and the Imperial Fists have it as a relic on the Phalanx. That is a small timeline of what he did in the first few years of his life. Now we shall go over the lessons we can learn from the Praetorian of Terra, Rogal of House Dorn. The first lesson from Dorn is being stoic, and I assume most people know what stoicism is, but the definition of stoicism is the endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint. This philosophy started as one of the 4 major schools of thought founded in ancient Athens by Zeno of Zintium, and this man believed that the practice of virtue is enough to gain eudaimonia, which is happiness in ancient Greek. Many people have used this philosophy throughout history of mankind, even though we do it sometimes and do not even know it. One man who was known for being stoic was Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, who wrote a journal which was named Meditations, and a couple of other men who have used this philosophy, being Seneca and Epictetus, who are well-known philosophers till this day. Getting back to Dorn, he's able to control his emotions, but he does have emotions. There are times when he lets his emotions get the best of him. He still uses his mind to control the emotions and uses the energy from the emotions to find a solution. For example, when he finds out that his brother turned traitor and almost killed Gara, but he was able to control himself, and he was able to hear out the other people, and he was able to gather his men and travel to Terra to relay the message to the Emperor and prepare for war. If he just killed Gara and let his emotions cloud his judgment, then something would happen much worse. But instead, he used his mind to find a way. What you can do to start being stoic is look at the emotion you are feeling during the situation and feel it later. Yes, there will be times when your emotions get the best of you, and that's fine, because we are humans, and it is in our nature to feel emotions, but we need to control them to find a solution for our problem. If you feel an emotion, make sure you take some time to feel those emotions instead of bottling them up. The next thing we can learn from the Praetorian is duty, and the definition of duty is the moral and legal obligation, or in a simple word, responsibility. As people, we are given responsibility from childhood, and we choose our responsibilities as we get older. This means it is our duty to fulfill the responsibilities we have chosen to the best of our ability. For example, we have a responsibility to be better than we were yesterday, and it is our duty to help the community and leave it better than it was when we were children. How this relates to Dorn is a quote that goes, "For duty, duty must be done. The rule applies for everyone." Dorn's duty is to be the builder, the Primarch to build the walls against the darkness, and him and his sons to man the walls. This is shown when they are garrisoned on a planet for the Imperial Fists, and they are the foundation of the Imperium. That is why they were chosen to be the Praetorians of Terra. And they are the ones to build and fortify. The lesson here is to fulfill the duties we are given as people throughout society and through life. Remember, you don't need to be recognized for the duties you do. The final lesson from Dorn is pragmatism, and pragmatism is dealing with things sensibly and in a realistic way that is based on practical and theoretical considerations. Dorn uses pragmatism when it comes to battles and fortification, and I have read that during the Night Crusade, Dorn uses all the abilities at his disposal in a reasonable way to lessen the amount of casualties on his side and the other side. And he even uses diplomacy, but not as good as his brother Gilliman. He uses his military mind to capture worlds and bring them into compliance. His sons are mainly heavy assault and siege experts, using squads of bolters and tanks, but still have close quarters squads, but they deal with combat in a pragmatic way, with Thorn at the helm of the Imperial Fists, which makes them even more dangerous due to the battlefield logic that he holds. Here are a few ways to incorporate pragmatism. Find ways to achieve maximum success with little effort, and by that I mean don't fully plan something to the smallest detail, but focus on the essential things. For example, if you're planning a project, write down a list that are at the top of the list and are a big part of the project. Do take time with things like this, because if you rush through it, for if you didn't look at everything beforehand, then it will take more effort to fill the holes in your plan. Main thing as well is to start small and work your way up, because before you know it, you will have everything set. Pragmatism can be practiced daily as well. For example, finding a logical way to get a task done right and in a smaller period of time. We even do it during our jobs. If you're doing the same task every day and you are able to do the task correctly, but in a quicker time due to pragmatic thinking. The main message I have learned from Dorn about masculinity is to do the right thing and to be the wall against injustice and to shield those who can't defend themselves. Dorn's archetype is the reformer, and he is idealistic and has set high standards for him and his sons to serve the Imperium to this day. He is also known to be direct, honest, and precise in all things, and I think that is an important part as being a man. Because if we don't be direct and honest, then what's the point of doing anything? But remember basic sympathy and to have standards for ourselves. Because like I said before, the main job for the Imperial Fists is to have a foundation of ourselves. Because if we don't as men, then we'll be in the darkness and not within walls. Still leave the walls and go into the darkness, for it can also teach you lessons. But remember to return to your walls when you need to. Now we are at the end of the video on Dorn. In the next two videos, I'll be going over two of his sons, starting off with the first Captain Sigismund and the last one being Pedro Cantor of the Crimson Fists. If you liked the video, hit the subscribe button and share it with someone who might be interested in it. Have a good day, and may Dorn stand beside you. This is Wisdom of Warhammer, signing off.